Cold wind hums under the moon. Footsteps count hours too soon. Old drums warn, hush the fire. Winter talks on the wire. Maps unfold, corners turn gray. Ravens stitch thread through the day. Vows taste sharp on the tongue. Steel keeps the very young. North-born hearts carry the snow. Soft eyes learn what blades know. Truth is a coin flipped twice. Honor walks thin, cracked ice. Courtyard dusk, secrets start. Tea turns to smoke in the heart. Whispers breathe, candlelight leans. Chessboards of hidden seas. Heart calls out promises due. Crowns weigh the heads they woo. Gold smiles with hungry teeth. Mercy lies far beneath. Letters float, ink turns black. Choices that never come back. Storms ride on saddled fear. Hooves drum the year to hear. Walls of frost, eyes like flint. Oaths leave a spectral print. Shadows preach hungry creeds. Night sows a field of needs. Fire sleeps under the ash. Salt meets the iron clash. Timbers groan, banners bend. Lines blur from foe to friend. Courts straight in velvet lies. Justice wears borrowed eyes. Dice roll under the throne. Right stands apart alone. Thin as glass, footprints in drifting grass. New roads splitting on our shore. Still hearts learn to endure. Brush off the restless snow. Breathe slow and let it go. Winter keeps steady time. We swing in smoky rhyme.
Find a southern mile, Saxophone, weary smile, markets of honeywood. Boots find a southern mile, dust lifts a weary smile, markets of honey words, deal nails made with gilded sword, pages of law and sin, dice cups of courtly grin, teachers with iron hands measure the shifting sand, lanterns in hallway gloom, rumors that seed the room, mass sip a ruby wine, truth walks a crooked line, hounds of ambition bark, torches ignite the dark, couriers run too late, locks learn the weight of fate, feasts turn to sharpened quills, lutes hush and window chills, promises burn to smoke, laughter becomes a choke. Young blood studies the blade, names of the lost are weighed, oaths tie a fragile knot, honor is easily bought, north wind returns a stare, ice dust the watchman's hair, far drums begin to roll, night chargers toll by toll, ships on a salted track, iron on iron crack, storm glass begins to sing, tides pull at everything, chords craft a deadly play, jesters keep truth at bay, silk smiles conceal the cost, lines crossed and bridging sands. Cradles of ash and gold, stories the healers told, let the starlight in. Lost shapes the softer skin, crafted and cast aside, wings that refuse to hide. Outcasts who hum a tune, dance with a patient moon. Lessons in iron slang, bells with a warning clang. Practice until it hurts, sweat stains the training shirts. Dreams with a tethered kite, hands learning wrong from right. Truth in a trembling fist, fog in a morrow mist. Markets of bone and bread, coins for a stranger's bed. Mercy with ragged seams, hunger rewriting dreams. Walls carved of ancient frost, marches that count the cost. Eyes on the endless white, hope as a pocket light. Courts in a gilded ring, secrets that bite and sting. Smiles in a painted row, daggers that live below. Echoes of chapel chimes, prayers for better times. Old roots and newer boughs, crossed by 1,000 vows. Clocks with the missing gear, love mixed with quiet fear. Broken can still be bright, shards make a gentler light. Drifters of ash and flame, none of them stay the same. Jazz finds a midnight key, minor to major free. Raise up the fragile wing, let every fracture sing. Broken is not the end, broken can still amend. Gold in a hungry ring, power a brittle thing. Hands reaching through the smoke, words that were never spoke. Courtyards of velvet law, masks with a smiling flaw. daggers behind the lace, justice without a face. Feathers of pride take flight, lose altitude by night. Crowns press a tender brow. Who dares to question how? Deals in a tapping code, carriage along the road. Silence can shout so loud, storm hiding in the crowd. Trials where truth is sold, juries of glass and gold. Fate with a gambler's grin, heads or tails, lose or win. Ash in the banquet bowl, salt in the wounded soul. Bridges set out to burn, none of them ever learn. Horns from a distant field, steel upon painted shield. Thunder that won't be tamed, glory that can't be named. Walls hear a secret vow, tremble but keep it somehow. Rooms with a listening floor, shadows behind the door. Rivers of rumor flow, carry the high and low. Crown that was forged to blind, crown that will crack the mind. Morning strips off the gold, leaves what the fingers hold. Paper can't brace the flame, power forgets your name. Wear what you think you won, set it against the sun. Gilded or made of air, both vanish in the glare. In a captive square, silence that chills the air, eyes that refuse to plead. Honor becomes a seed. Crowds with a single breath, close to a holy death. Mercy is burden bound, hope buried in the ground. Night with a copper taste, love in a backward haste. Tears that can't wash the stain, stone stitching up the pain. ash becomes tender light, fire remains the night. Something that should be gone finds a new burning dawn. Snow at the edge of prayer, wolves in the winter glare, oaths that will not let go, shadows that want to grow. Letters with broken wax, bargains with hidden tags, scribes trying not to shake lines only fools will break. Mountains of steel confess kingship is not a dress. Power demands its due, blood signs a final clue. Cold on a rider's cheek, bravery dressed as meek. Friends wearing stranger skins, fate laughing when it wins. Fire and salted rain, chains humming soft with pain. Birth in a field of ash, future in sudden flash. Night with a newborn spark, music that warms the dark. Drummers who know the way count off another day, fall to the earth and rise. Smoke drawing wider skies, where ashes teach your name. Walk with a newborn flame. Bridges and boats take aim, who will rise the nameless name? Ripples erase the shore, nothing is like before. Campfire weary men, letters that blur again. Maps with a bleeding seam, sleep with a troubled dream. Shadows with quiet nights, stories of traded lives. Honor that slips its thread, promises underfed. Cages of a rope and a wood, good men misunderstood. Keys on a trader's ring, locks that refuse to sing. Fathers and sons at odds, prayers to unhearing God. Pride with a brittle bone, thrones colder than the stone. Roads where the ambush waits, toll house of iron gates. Trust is a spending spree, hid with no guarantee. Kisses that taste like war, soft hands that hide a scar. Love with a soldier's gait, tender and full of weight. Fields where the banners sleep, rain where the secrets seep. Night sows a barbed wire grain, dawn's harvest loss and pain. Songs for the wounded brave, salt for the lives we save, floats for the ones who fell, drums for the ghosted bell. River keeps rolling on, steals and restores the dawn. Jazz in a minor prayer, breath meeting colder air. Lay every very banner down, wash off the borrowed crown. River, remember this, war is a broken kiss. Ships with the smoke beneath, bells cry a copper note. Fear climbs the city's throat. Streets hold their salted breath, windows rehearse for death. Torches with nervous hands, waiting for war's demand. Green behave
ledgers of soot and stains, power with shaken knees, smoke in the royal tree. Morning behind the fog, heroes that hedge and saw, winners with haunted eyes, losers who still arise, coins for a stranger's road, fables in lighter load, ash where the lilies grew, seeds making something new, sky with a sulfur stain, sea humming old refrain, green fire sleeps in glass. Pray it will never pass. Close up the harbor gate. Hope walks on lighter midnight will fade to blue. Day has a debt to you. Cold dawn counts steps as the harbor breeze and oars answer softly. Promises weigh heavy where salt eats steel, yet courage still bargain. Old vows taste iron while new coins shine a little too brightly. A map unfolds asking the heart to pay before the hand can hold. Letters ride wings through ash gray air, stitching rumor to memory. Quiet rooms decide loud fates with candles bending like witnesses. A child of winter studies warmth, learning cost in every kindness. Mercy is measured out in spoons while duty is poured like smoke. Ships lean like old gamblers, listening for a kinder wind to rise. Dark ropes hum low blues, and boots echo careful patterns on wood. I search the horizon for justice, but the tide negotiates slowly. Every return demands a price, and every welcome hides a test. Courtyards polish their stones, teaching footsteps how to behave. Truth wears a servant's coat, carrying trays that rattle with fear. Power whispers behind screens, coaxing soft answers from hard mouths. Winter stands politely nearby, tapping time with gloved fingers. Steel remembers each grip, even as hands forget their innocence. Wine pretends to be comfort, though it only loosens the masks. Some meals are feasts for wolves, Northbound drums talk of storms, and campfires trade small miracles. Coins travel like migrating bird, landing where the brave pretend. A bargain is ink and heartbeat, drying faster than regret can speak. Service bends the spine, yet sometimes straightens the soul. Fisher bells mark the hour, while watchmen study the snow line. Ravens argue with the wind, debating which truth should arrive. A wounded hope gets bandaged, learning how to breathe again. The city yawns, then sharpens, and calls the debt collector. Armor hangs like wet laundry, dripping stories onto the floor. Pages turn under rough thumbs, and rules learn to be flexible. Gentle hands stitch cruel choices, making them fit by midnight. A small kindness survives the day, hiding beneath a larger sin. Bridges speak in wooden vowels, promising safe passage at dusk. Footprints confess to silence, as if silence were a priest. Love writes in margins, because the main text belongs to war. Service is a circle that closes slowly with quiet authority. Night folds the harbor into itself, counting lanterns like coins. Breath clouds the mirror of water, and the future fogs with it. Every oath becomes a room, and someone is already inside waiting. The door opens inward, and the bill lies neatly on the table. Pay with your courage, tip with your grace. Carry the burden, keep steady pace. All must serve something sung low and true. Let winter judge gently the work we do.
Feathered messengers cut the sky, the shadows stitching the roofs. What cannot walk still travels, and what is whispered becomes law. Ing Mary's rumor, then raises sharp-tongued children in the rafters. The city pretends to sleep, but its ears are wide and hungry. The kitchen boy hears a kingdom boiling in battered pots. A widow reads weather and footprints and closes her shutters tighter. In crowded halls, polite lies wear velvet shoes and smile. The truth takes the service entrance, wiping its feet on the mat. Roads fork like questions, each sending a different bill. Trust keeps a ledger, crossing out names with steady patience. A soft hand offers tea, but the saucer trembles with thunder. Some doors require a secret knock, others prefer apologies. Our letters arrive The teacher counts beats with a blade, steady as a metronome. Lessons arrive in splinters, and knowledge stains like wine. The young learn slower kindness and quicker ways to bleed. Honor tries to stand upright, while fear leans hard on its shoulder. Campfires share low gossip as spoons drum against tin. Promises hover above the stew, seasoning hope with a risk. A watchman hums through chattering teeth, translating snow to time. Messages glide overhead, too fast for prayer to catch. Courts rehearse their theater, cueing silence for the lid. Mask bow to other masks, and the audience forgets to blink. Coins clap quietly in pockets, applauding the cleverest lines. Someone laughs too long and gives the ending away. Barn doors confess to moonlight, swinging on guilty hinges. Even the river keeps secrets, taught by stones to be discreet. A mother names a future, then hides that name in bread. Dark wings keep flapping, mixing thunder into lullabies. The past sends postcards stamped with winter's small approval. Old debts arrive unescorted, confident they will be welcome. Names are not spoken, yet everyone knows who is meant. The hush becomes a chorus, singing where no one can say. By dawn, the city owns new worries, stacked like firewood. Words settle in corners, pretending to be dust and nothing more. The sky clears its throat, promising fair weather, lying sweetly. A final bird circles twice and lands exactly where it must. Carry the letters, don't fear their weight. Read them in winter, answer by late. Truth in a feather, rumor and rhyme. Dark words keep perfect, unforgiving time. The road finds every traveler, charging in splinters and shame. Wheels biting mud like old judges, and pass sentence without speech. A laugh turns to iron, then breaks in the mouth like glass. Power claps once, and the echo keeps clapping until night. Hands learn what loss feels like, counting with fewer fingers. Pride is built in advance and paid in unexpected coins. Silence wears manacles of etiquette, polished and presentable. Cruelty smiles with clean boots, stepping around the blood. A river keeps a straight face, even when it knows the joke. Bridges refuse to testify, though their boards remember everything. The sky writes a warning in gray, neat as ledger lines. Storm crows audit the field, approving the worst investments. In shadowed rooms, small kings practice frowns in the mirror. The toast tastes of ashes, though the goblet gleams politely. Soft music hides a blade, tuned exactly to the heart. The dance card fills with debts, partners changing by the bar. Cam chains speak in links, rattling out ugly lullabies. Boots kick time against wagons, bruising rhythm into wood. Someone prays for gentler weather and receives a colder truth. Punishment travels faster than mercy and never needs rest. Letters return unanswered, as if the paper had sinned. A banner droops like a tired promise, gathering gray rain. Road dust seals every oath, turning breath to gravel. Even forgiveness demands a witness, and none will stand up. A teacher of pain corrects posture with sudden authority. Lessons are permanent ink, written beneath the skin of memory. The price of arrogance is posted, readable from any distance. Tears file their reports, then clock out without comment. Evening sets a stern tempo, tapping its cane on stone. The city averts its eyes, practicing difficult compassion. A door closes softly, choosing not to hear the plea. Night signs the page beside a stain in perfect cursive. Wolves in fine clothing discuss mercy, agreeing to reschedule. A cold supper waits, tasting of apology and salt. Patience shares a blanket with rage, both pretending to sleep. Every mile becomes a sermon, preached by broken wheels. Dawn arrives late, already tired, yet still counting. Shadows step aside for bruised light and offer no guidance. The road continues, open mouth prepared to swallow more. Punishment nods once, satisfied with the day's collection. Breathe through the ache, keep walking the line. Salt on the lip, a disciplined spine. Justice or vengeance, both charge a fee. Choose what to carry and choose to be free. all stare back without blinking, their stones memorizing names. A vow unravels quietly, thread pulled by a shaking hand. Cold kitchens warm to fire, then suddenly burn with purpose. The cage door forgets its job and opens like a sunrise. Orders march into the past, obedient and doomed to silence. A prayer loses patience and learns to speak in flame. Keys jingle like laughter, unlocking debts no chord would hear. Chains remember every wrist, yet slip as if bored with duty. A city wakes to ash and calls it a different snow. Smoke writes its own rules, generous to some, cruel to others. Those who never had a chance finally breathe without permission. Freedom is noisy at first, then learns a steadier beat. Glass sings in the streets and boots keep uncertain tempo. Power discovers its shadow, taller than expected, colder too. The faithful find new altars made of courage and charm. A banner of heat unfolds and the wind bows despite itself. In hidden cells, the smallest hope grows. Stubborn roots, names are exchanged for futures, and futures for a common name. A wronged heart unlocks a city by simply refusing to kneel. The night watches, slightly impressed and slightly afraid. Old oats file complaints, stamped and sent to nowhere. A guard sets down his spear, choosing to carry a child instead. Distant bells argue with fire, losing on every count. The ledger of pain is ripped and thrown into the street. New air tastes wild, full of ash and possibility. Hands that knew only chains begin to speak in gestures. Songs learn better words, humming over broken doors. The ground itself seems lighter, rehearsing an unfamiliar joy. Across the river, someone prays for order to return. But order wore a mask, and the mask is melting. Justice walks barefoot through cinders, careful but unashamed. What ends in smoke might begin in soil if watered. The sun arrives late, embarrassed by last night's shouting. Windows blink soot from their lashes and choose to forgive. Children count the sparks like stars, then rename the constellations. The future knocks softly, asking if anyone is still brave. A final lock snaps, then lies like a tooth on stone. Silence inhales, tasting both grief and
sweet relief. Not all debts are paid, but some interest stops growing. The watch is ended, and the watching has just begun. Hold the new doorway, breathe without fear. Carry the living, bury the spear. Ash on the threshold, dawn on the floor. Open the city, widen the door. Rain whispers secrets to flames, and the cave learns to glow. Two bodies trade promises the world cannot afford to hear. A fighter prays to embers, bargaining with sparks and breath. Judgment arrives wearing fire, and leaves carrying questions. Steel circles truth like a hawk, testing the wind for weakness. A wound remembers the lesson long after the crowd goes home. Love sneaks past law, leaving wet footprints on the stone. The heart studies flames grammar and speaks it almost fluently. Songs of old gods and new heat overlap in the dark. Ash kisses wet hair, and both pretend not to care. A trial by burning light redefines tomorrow's address. As even the river holds still, listening for verdicts. Sparks argue with rain, fiercely and without apology. A blade finds a softer answer than anyone expected. The judge is tired, but the law insists on another dance. Hands tremble, then steady, accepting a small miracle. Meanwhile, coins arrange a marriage between convenience and pride. Tense hum with rumors, stitching armor to fragile dreams. A name almost spoken gets swallowed by careful mouths. The night edits the story, but keeps the dangerous parts. A king without patience,
Back in the cave, silence writes long paragraphs on skin. The fire learns tenderness, and the rain learns restraint. Two hearts decide to breathe together, despite the calendar. The world frowns and is ignored with uncommon grace. Morning arrives, modest, refusing to gossip about the night. Armor reclaims its place, unforgiving but necessary. Promises hide under cloaks, trying to appear practical. The road resumes its sermon, stricter than any priest. Elsewhere, a door slams shut on a foolish bet. Winning proves expensive, losing oddly affordable today. Blood inks a contract no one meant to draft. The quill breaks, the terms will not. By dusk, fire and rain sign a temporary treaty. The cave grows quiet, storing warmth for colder hours. Judgment fades into rumor, and rumor into song. The law takes notes, but refuses to hum along. Kiss in the firelight, swear what you can. Promise with breathing, finish the plan. Rain on the threshold, ash on the tongue. Love learns a language the brave have sung. Christ stands like a cathedral, insisting on absolute belief. Ropes argue with gravity, and gloves translate fear to grip. Breath paints brief murals on air, erased in an instant. The mountain charges interest on every borrowed step. Below the market hisses, swapping futures for secrets. A ladder of chances appears where mercy would not. Boots learn the price of altitude, toe by trembling toe. Silence negotiates with wind, using a very old contract. Two mouths sign peace with smoke, then bill each other later. In the city, silk rehearses cruelty behind friendly drapes. Chairs are pulled at the right time, and wrong bodies fall. The coin laughs quietly, celebrating its clever circulation. On the wall of the world, a glove slips, then stays. The rogue complains, but honors its marriage to leather. From that height, old kingdoms look like chess sets for children. The future peers over the edge.
Talker sells gravity as a friend, then proves otherwise. A promise is traded for a better view than broken. Some deals climb, others push. Frost burns brighter than flame, preaching a colder gospel. Heartbeats count louder than drums, stern as inspectors. Names freeze before leaving lips, then fall as glass. The sky adopts the desperate, at least for a moment. Somewhere below, a kiss forgives 1,000 miles. A map tears along its crease, right where it matters. Flags learn humility in wind that knows no master. The world becomes smaller and the stakes grow large. Hands that hated each other share heat through war. The mountain respects only truth, and truth is bread. Every breath is a coin tossed to an invisible judge. Sometimes it's enough, sometimes not. A final pull, a howl, a stunned and shaking laugh. Boots land on legend, surprised it feels like stone. Eyes find a horizon that does not blink first. No choir sings, the wind is all the verses. Below, fortunes shuffle above, silence signs its name. The lesson is simple, the teacher unforgiving and kind. Climb because the ground was lying in you. Climb because falling teaches nothing you can keep. Hold to the lifeline, answer the call. Trade fear for footing, be brazen and bold. Chaos or ladder, the choice is the same. Upward is costly, but pay it in flames. A traveling tune grows teeth, marching through mud and flowers. Laughter carts trouble along, dressed like a simple holiday. Some dances begin with courage, others with foolish timing. Either way, the drum insists and the foot obeys. A pit yawns, its opinion brown and enormous and loud. Steel shouts and circles, then remembers to be brave again. The crowd
studies manners while danger forgets to. A song interrupts violence and wins by a single note. Elsewhere wagons call rain and rain flirts back. Promises ride in pairs, arguing like stubborn mules. A ribbon of road decides to tangle around fate. Every mile invents a new version of loyalty. Carvers of policy sharpen knives on polite conversation. A cup overflows with flattery diluted with concealed threat. Even the banners look embarrassed by what is planned. The air itself blushes and the moon declines to watch. Back at the pit, courage climbs where it doesn't belong. A claw writes objections, the song writes better ones. The line between fool and hero dissolves in sawdust. Applause arrives confused, then stands on principle. Later, bruises teach sermons about unexpected tenderness. Past diverge like excuses, each confident, each doomed. The tune rides ahead, scouting for safer ground. It hums into camp and hides in a borrowed code. In the city, whispers rehearse in mirrored rooms. A wedding is planned with ledgers, not with heart. Even joy must sign paperwork and present witnesses. The pen feels heavy, the ink refuses to smile. But the road keeps strumming, selling small chances cheaply. A gentle hand takes the reins, surprising the horde. Silence buys the next hour with ever it can spare. Sometimes that is song, and sometimes it is tea. The bear remembers the note that saved the day. The crowd remembers the shiver that told them to care. Both wander into sleep with different definitions of mercy. Morning files a report, professionally vague. The tune becomes a rumor, then a lantern, then a guide. Mud dries into maps on every traveler's boots. Some roads are foolish, some are brave, most are both. The drum nods approval and starts again. Sing when it's dangerous, sing when it's wrong. Bite if you must, but carry the song. Laughter and courage can travel as pair. Music throws ladders where others throw snare.
counting its scars. Choices bid on one another, pretending to be destiny. A cup of desert wind tastes like unfinished business. The moon watches the auction, unimpressed but attentive. Contracts whisper their terms, promising sleep to the rich. A soft voice interrupts and the numbers begin to wobble. Fortunes pivot on kindness disguised as calculation. A coin turns over and falls as a heartbeat. Mercy negotiates with hunger, both underpaid and stubborn. A blade remembers another life and yearns for better work. Eyes meet across a fire, signing what paper refuses. Names are not spoken, but futures shake hands anyway. Back in a crowded hall, silk redefines loyalty. Smiles are assigned seats, frowns are placed at the door. A toast forgives nothing, yet gives permission to pretend. The orchestra of etiquette tunes to a cruel key. Horses identify liars, snorting at their careful boots. Desert stars pin the contract to a wider sky. A lantern decides to flicker at the right moment. A hired hand chooses a different master, his own heart. Paper tears quietly, like a secret learning to breathe. The camp stares, then looks away, then looks back chained. Some men are born twice, once to pay and once to choose. Tonight belongs to the second birth. Morning discovers unusual footprints and follows without objection. A tent stands empty, politely returning its borrowed space. The wind stamps new orders into the sand beyond. Choice writes a new surname and signs with firelight. In far courts, calculators complain about diminished profits. They cannot tally courage and so declare it useless. But courage files an appeal with the desert as witness. The verdict arrives in sunlight, handwritten and warm. The kettle laughs, boiling over with sudden relief. The road grows generous, offering water where none stood. Songs adjust their chords, welcoming a new harmony. A higher blade holsters doubt and reaches for hope. By dusk, the camp tells a different story to itself. Tomorrow learns to smile without permissions from price. The moon nods once, satisfied with the night's arithmetic. Choice sleeps well, armed and at peace. Rent out your steel, but lease back your soul. Count every coin ember to choose. Second bird's profit is what you won't lose. Bread breaks softly, as if apologizing for hunger and haste. Cups touch like old friends, unwilling to discuss the bill. Promises are seated by rank, while trust stands in the hall. A song begins politely, then stares at the knife too long. Rain waits outside the door, rehearsing its condolences. Laughter edits the past, trimming what will not fit the dress. Banners yawn, bored with those that never learn to breathe. The floor studies its reflection, bracing for impolite news. A bow draws breath across strings, tasting iron in the music. The tempo smiles, then quickens, then shows its true teeth. Eyes widen without speaking, conversation drowned by rhythm. The air decides to freeze, and the candles forget to melt. Plates turn to shields, it's too late for their sudden promotion. The tablecloth fails to heal despite the bleeding pattern. Chairs abandoned, etiquette collapsing in mortal relief. The tune does not stop, it simply multiplies. Outside, the rain begins its impartial ministry. Horses refuse to look, hooves counting for the stun. A mother's thought lodges in the throat of midnight. Hope drops its glass and cannot find the stem. Somewhere a child sleeps, learning sorrow by osmosis. Somewhere a raven leaves, choosing work over grief. The river will remember, carving hush into its banks. The sky closes its eyes, not from mercy, but fatigue. The song keeps time with finality, exact and merciless. A last embrace becomes evidence, pressed like a flower. Names retreat into silence, too sacred for this room. Only the violins speak, and they have no mercy there. Morning discovers the stain no story can wash away. Flags hang heavier as if soaked in unsent letters.
the hall breeze out once, then swallows the echo. A ledger adds a chapter called Never Again unsigned. From far fields dancers begin their slow, inevitable march, just as dresses and travel clothes prepared for ugly road. Vengeance laces its boots, promising not to run ahead. Patience packs bread, water, and a sharpened prayer. When the song is over, silence wears its crown. Feasts will be smaller and truer for a while. Trust will count seats twice and lock the door thrice. The rain finishes its sermon, then leaves by the side gate. Lower the music, lift up the vow, bury the cruelty, remember the how. Grief keeps the rhythm till mercy can start. Hush for the fallen and carry their art. Streets hum like beehives, sweet and dangerous, full of need. Locks surrender to laughter, surprised at their sudden kindness. A city divided learns one word and repeats it bravely. Dust rises in applause and banners find softer meanings. Chains lie like shed skins, puzzled to be irrelevant. The market changes currency from fear to grain and bread. A leader walks barefoot in spirit, sharing weight like bread. Hands reach as if greeting rain after a long, loud fire. Some argue that order was better when cruel but neat. Others insist the heart requires a mess to grow. The truth answers with water, food, and open doors. For once, arithmetic favors the poor and the patient. The river learns new songs, teaching boats to sway kindly. Even the sun behaves, lowering its glare to listen. A small child touches a stranger's sleeve without flinching. The stranger forgets to be strange and smiles like kin. Meanwhile, far away, courts polish their instruments of doubt. They count according to habit and arrive at familiar errors. But rumor travels faster, carrying pictures of unbarred balconies dressed with washing lines. The city exhales and someone finally sleeps through noon. Justice this time walks slowly to avoid mistakes. Mercy circles the block, checking corners for leftovers. Dignity gets a haircut and keeps the mirror. Hunger is asked to leave and surprise considers it. Of course there will be trouble, the past keeps receipts. But new accountants arrive, trained in bread and grace. They balance different books where children are assets. The profit is measured in songs per evening rising. Ships plan their routes by kindness, not by tribute. Scribes update the word for ruler to mean servant. Armor learns to rest in peace and does not mind. The future stops knocking and simply walks inside. At sunset, streets glow like rivers of patient embers. A mother too many sits down finally and eats. No trumpet announces this victory. The quiet is enough. Tomorrow we'll test it. Tonight we'll guard it well. Open the doorway, out the water, share out the weed. Call every stranger brother or friend. Let this new chapter refuse to end. Night drapes his doubts over a room where candles argue, and no belief takes off its mask and whispers for a chance. A heartbeat returns like a tide that forgot to withdraw. Everyone stares at the water as if it might answer. Home is a word that moves, shifting its walls and doors. Cold halls remember laughter, and the dust remembers feet. A child of winter breathes deeper and learns to be heavy. Even the stones lean closer, you hear the new beginning. Oh, sit on the table like knives set out for guests. Some were spoken in fear and others in shining pride. The voice that broke them wonders if mending
is possible. Silence keeps the minutes and refuses to look away. A stranger brings heat that burns without showing a flame. Doubt circles the room and counts the exits twice. Faith is a lens that fogs and then clears with patience. What returns from the dark keeps its reasons to itself. Courtyards collect footsteps like debtors collect promises. Old rivals weigh forgiveness and find it heavier than steel. The sky brightens a little as if the season reconsidered. A gate squeals open, surprised it can still be useful. Letters ride on the wind to places that forgot their names. Some carry warnings and some carry a second chance. Hands shake and doorways bargaining for a smaller future. No one notices the hour changing its close. A room without windows hosts a conversation with fear. Someone decides that mercy needs a sharper outline. The past knocks softly and leaves before being invited. Ash falls like quiet advice on everyone's shoulders. Couriers cross bridges that remember better weather. Each step pays taxes to ghosts that prefer exact change. A banner lifts from the floor and remembers its duty. Honor puts on its boots and walks into the day. Around the long table, truth sits with its back to the fire. Words taste divine and salt and unintended hopes. What was broken agrees to function, though not to forget. Tomorrow signs the page and tucks it under a plate. Night returns with fewer objections than before. Breath steams briefly and then chooses to stay. The room exhales and the candles relax their posture. Ash cools in a meaning that everyone understands. Call back the wandering heart, open the door, count what was lost and ask for more. Light what you can and carry it right. Begin once again with ash and candlelight. Wearing dust and a borrowed smile. It asks for coal and kindness and a place at the table. The hearth listens, deciding how much warmth to release. Walls lean inward, as if curious about mercy. Across the valley, a gate remembers a childhood name. Hands that once fought secrete like battered relatives. Bread breaks slower, careful not to spill the new piece. Eyes measure distance in breaths rather than miles. A tale about a door travels faster than the moon. It opens to a path that requires a toll of memory. Two friends of winter hold it while the storm considers. Snow edits the story, removing what cannot survive. Elsewhere, a long shadow kneels to borrow fire. It claims to heal with pain, and the payment is steep. A blade keeps time for a ritual without laughter. The crowd looks away and pretends to hear rain. Blood remembers a promise that paper dared not keep. A writer from the past collects on an old investment. Fear tries to set the price, but love interrupts loudly. Dead scatter when courage walks into the room. Another threshold argues with the rule of belonging. A voice says stay, and another says go farther. The book of the stranger expands by a single page. Names are not used, and yet everyone is recognized. In a distant hall, law sharpens its perfectly clean teeth. It bites into a story and finds a wound still breathing. Compassion pushes back with nothing but stubborn light. The floor learns a prayer taught by muddy boots. Between two worlds, a bridge holds until it does not. Below, the river practices how to keep a secret. Above, the sky rehearses grief and gets every line right. The moment carves itself into the door frame forever. Those who remain stack wood and comfort on the same cart. They haul through night where morning will not return. Still a tiny bloom appears in a crack of the stair. Everyone chooses to step over it gently. The door closes slowly and asks to be forgiven. Hands rest on its grain and promise to remember. Past diverge with a courtesy learned from pain. The stranger leaves, but the house stays larger. Hold open the threshold, share out the bread. Let hurt be spoken and mercy be read. If night must enter, teach it to care. A door can be brave when someone is there. A face is a river that can change its course by will. A name is a code that may be folded and left behind. Footsteps rewrite biographies on streets that watch closely. Shadows applaud the art of being difficult to find. Lessons arrive with bruises that know the correct answers. Silence carries a stick and points to the proper choice. A bowl of water reflects a stranger who looks familiar. Identity becomes a room with too many mirrors. Far away, another student studies the weight of regret. He learns that broken tools can still cut through the day. A small kindness knocks twice and enters without asking. Meanwhile, the city sharpens itself on route and memory. Courtyards rehearse confessions no one wants to hear. A blade sits quietly in a drawer of good intentions. Justice changes shoes and tries a different route. Mass file past like seasons, each insisting on truth. The one beneath them breathes slow and counts heartbeat law. When the test arrives, it pretends to be something else. Toys answers quickly and pays whatever it costs. Back roads gather witnesses who prefer not to speak. A traveler hides in daylight, safer than any cellar. The teacher inside the womb becomes unexpectedly patient. Healing takes a long way so it can learn the area. An old fighter returns to a task left half buried. He lifts it with both hands and respects its anger. The world makes room for a softer version of strength. Hard ground, not satisfied with the bargain. Inside the city, debts argue about who is owed. A list of wrongs keeps adding names to itself. But gentleness walks through like weather that cannot be stopped. It dampens the dust and gives the air a purpose. The river carries away a story that refused to settle. A girl with no name carries a name home anyway. Two paths meet in the middle and act surprised. The moon pretends not to know and smiles. At last the mirror shows only what chooses to stay. The rest leaves quietly with the evening's vendor. Someone who was no one buys bread with a steady coin and eats as if hunger were finally negotiable. Leave what you borrowed, keep what is true. Walk out in daylight, begin something new. If no one can answer, someone still can. A heart Runs under frost, call brave mistakes to assemble. The field answers with breath that hangs in reviews. Two lines face the space where mercy is not scheduled. Even the crows hesitate to own the sky. A plea travels across the white and loses its footing. Pride pretends to be armor and fails at the worst time. Old anger steps forward before strategy can speak. The first charge writes its signature in the air. Mud becomes history quicker than anyone expected. Horses invent storms that only their riders can read. Hands reach for allies and find only snow and thunder. The day shrinks to a tunnel with no light visible. More than courage that learned patience chooses a different path. It refuses the trap built from reckless devotion. Banners shift like migrating birds and suddenly matter. The line breathes again and widens enough for hope. The circle of fear tightens until it forgets to move. Inside that squeeze, a heartbeat counts in iron numbers. Someone stands taller than the ruin allows. The air breaks open and the trapped remember how to run. From the ridge, help arrives late but entirely. It pours like truth into a room of organized lies. The field tilts and cruelty loses its confident smile. A quiet promise from long ago is finally kept. When the shouting ebbs, snow behaves like snow again. Cold washes the faces of those who still have faces. A banner that once knelt rises without permission. The ground accepts the fallen and asks no questions. Across the yard of victory, grief keeps its own parade. It carries a weight that parades cannot lighten. Justice looks away for a second and then looks harder. A door that stayed locked opens for the right knock. Hands clean the field as if tidying a family room. They speak little because the wind already explained. A leader remembers that winning is
Turn back to winter and call it home.
A city full of candles pretends to forget itself. Corridors learn the sound of careful plodding footsteps. The bell of certainty rings with a polished echo. Nobody suspects the song sheet has changed its key. Spark chooses a corridor and becomes doctrine. Windows swell with light until they cannot contain it. Air turns to blade without showing its handle. Silence shatters into a choir that never rehearsed. When the light is gone, the quiet is worse than thunder. Streets hold their breath for those who will not return. The old order arranges its excuses like flowers. A new wind rises from rooms that used to be locked. Across the sea of schedules, a tide of decision gathers. Maps gain new directions written by an ungloved hand. A table of counselors argues with its own shadow. The world leans toward confrontation without blinking. On high steps a figure counts ravens like hours. Fire looks at stone and sees an invitation. Ships learn a language of intent more fluent than flags. The coast remembers the taste of ambition. Caravans of grain and pride roll through narrow passes. Every hill becomes a courtroom with ruthless jurors. Armies study each other as if reading a private diary. Clouds lower their faces to better hear the verdict. In a field of gold, iron writes fast in crimsoning. Horses skid through smoke that tastes of broken plans. A small group changes a large future with perfect timing. Flame bends like a dancer and then becomes a wall. Victors look like survivors and not much else. The day's prophet is a ledger no one wants to balance. A road appears where certainty used to stand. The next move
is whispered by ash on the breeze. At a lonely watch, waves learn the names of prisoners. Ice carries messages to depths that keep everything. Alliances shift like sand but pretend to be stone. Every promise has a clause written in weather. Evening writes its name on rooftops and armored shoulders. Torches travel toward an answer not yet prepared. Tomorrow will be bolder than any council expected. The storm grows quiet and the glass stays silent. Trust the small signal, follow the sign. Measure your losses, redraw the line. When light becomes verdict and smoke becomes law, walk through the embers and learn what you saw. A plan in winter close, steps beyond the last lantern. Breath stands up in the air and asks who is certain. Boots learn new meanings for distance and return. The horizon wears teeth that no map mentioned. Companions share flasks and arguments with equal heat. They trade bravery for laughter and both seem fair. The land pays them in silence that does not end. Tracks disappear and the sky refuses to help. Strategy grown under their carpets. Ships rehearse landings and birds rewrite routes. A raven with too much news cannot choose a window. The clock eats hours as if they were crumbs. On the ice, the line between courage and error thins. A lake pretends to be stone and then remembers water. Hands reach for hands and sometimes find them too late. The wind shows every face and refuses to judge. A story told badly. Fire gallops through the sky because there is no road. The day is saved in a way that creates fresh danger. Gratitude and dread share a blanketed sea. A secret steps forward carefully. Truth unwinds like thread pulled from a stubborn sleeve. Two people study a mirror and see their maps rearranged.
its chorus. Walls that once bragged now shiver without humor. The sea bears unexpected travelers to an unwilling shore. All hands prepare for a night that intends erasure. Even the moon considers hiding behind its own shadow. When the cold finally arrives, it does not knock. It fills the lungs and the gaps between sentences. Steel rings bravely and then rings again for memory. Fire stands its ground and loses slowly and wisely. Dawn finds survivors counting each other like coins. The line held just enough for meaning to continue. Loss sits among them like a relative no one can send away. Plans are rewritten with smaller handwriting. Messengers hurry to tell those who thought they knew. Warnings acquire teeth, inviting to complacent wood. The world tilts toward a meeting older than crowns. East of the wall, the lesson remains unfinished. Walk past the lantern, learn from the cold. Share out the risking, be quiet and bold. If winter keeps secrets, answer with flame. Carry each other and write down your name. The city rings itself awake with notes that should comfort. Instead they open the sky like a wound no one admits. Streets pour into each other and forget their addresses. The air turns bright and then refuses to dim. From the distance, resolve becomes something else entirely. Promises melt into decisions that cannot be recalled. Stone remembers how to fall and learns enthusiasm. Shadows flee before heat that does not negotiate. In doorways families stray, single choices. Some run toward water and some toward wall. A single flower on a sill witnesses everything. It stays until it cannot and then joins the air. Above, victory learns the cost of being unchallenged. Below, mercy takes a path that is suddenly blocked. The day writes over itself repeatedly with fire. Dust becomes language and speaks of endings. When the flames tire, silence returns with swollen eyes. It counts the uncountable and then sits beside it. A seed of iron worries about its purpose without saying. Crowds wander as if looking for the previous world. Far away, an old friend of winter remembers a promise. He holds a torn banner that still knows the wind. Another chooses a road made of ash and stubbornness. Their footprints diverge like a final argument. In the north of the heart, a night darker than stories arise. The living stand shoulder to shoulder with fear. A single spark becomes 1,000 acts of defiance. The sky listens and refuses to help or hinder. After the night and the bells, the counting continues. What remains tries to behave like a beginning. A meeting of enemies sounds like family for a moment. Truth takes off its armor and breathes like a human. A throne without mercy becomes a question more than an answer. Power changes seats as if the chairs burn the same. The crowd waits for a promise that will outlive ceremonies. A small council of hunger demands immediate attention. At the end, paths turn into quiet lanes of ordinary duty. Books close but leave scraps to mark the honest pages. Hands that were enemies learn how to stack bricks together. The city chooses to live and is believed. Lower the banners, listen for peace. Measure your power by those you release. If bells can betray, let whispers mend. Begin like a neighbor and end as a friend.